and welcome to another edition of the Nerdy Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Pedersen, with my one brother and fellow nerd, Josh, here today. We don't have AJ, so we decided to change the entire setup and make it look really cool because we kind of thought that when he was here, we weren't able to
maximize it?
Yeah, make it look
I don't know.
nice.
He's in
Texas.
Texas.
Took up a lot of space.
He's going to have some fun. He's in the warmer weather right now. It's getting cold here in Minnesota. So.
He said Zillow unlock.
Yeah.
We should, the next podcast when he gets back, we should have him talk about Zillow unlock.
Yeah.
I think that would
all
be
the non-confidential stuff that he can share.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some stuff that they want people pushing out there.
Yeah.
So off of Zillow, though, today we're going to talk about the commission lawsuit, the verdict that came in last week that you've probably seen, give you an idea on what might be coming from that, what you should know, and some advice on what you can talk about to your clients, as well as on social media if you're planning on getting into that. So just to start, Josh, can you let them know, if they have been living under a rock, what came down from the verdict? And let's back up maybe. What is the commission lawsuit?
Yeah, sure. So, we talked about it, 2 weeks ago? So it's not, it feels like we're kind of being repetitive a little bit here, but because of the fact that they actually got to an outcome on the commission lawsuit, it's going to create a little more certainty around where things are going. Long story short, it's been quite a while, but sellers had kind of started complaining about the way in which the clear cooperation policy makes it so that you have to offer a buyer's agent compensation for selling your house, which sounded backwards to a lot of sellers. They started complaining about it. A lawyer picked it up, and they've been going back and forth now. It was like 4 or 5 years trying to figure out how they wanted to pursue this. It finally got to the point where it actually got to the courts, and then last week they ruled on it in favor of the plaintiff. So they ruled that the rules stating that sellers had to pay a buyer's agent compensation was not something that they should be able to do. They awarded, I think they haven't decided exactly what the numbers are, but it was $1.8 billion was the lawsuit amount. That is allowed to be tripled by the judge to, what would that be, $5.4 billion, which is a lot of money, especially, we'll talk about it, but the assets even available for these brokerages to pay out, it even eclipses, I think, what they even have available in assets. So it's a huge deal for the brokerages that this went this way. Immediately upon this happening, like within an hour of getting the verdict, the same attorney who sued on behalf of the plaintiffs in this case sued more brokerages. So now,
I think they had sued it was NAR, Home Services, Keller Williams were the ones that were left
Anywhere
over.
was on there.
Those 4 were the ones that were left over that didn't settle.
No, Anywhere I think settled. Keller was the big name of the ones that were kind of still out there for this one. And so, even Gary Keller took the stand in this lawsuit. And so it was a pretty big deal that this went this way. But immediately upon this verdict going that way, they said, okay, well, if we have positive momentum now, we might as well sue some more people, kind of thing. EXP's on the list, Compass is on the list, Redfin was on the list, among some others. So it's not even really close to over yet. But from a momentum standpoint, this is a little bit... I would say a little unexpected the way it went, how fast they got the verdict based on the way the trial was running. And now the momentum going forward will be in the seller's favor to continue to push the envelope on this practice.
The verdict came back in 2.5 hours.
It was fast.
It was pretty quick.
Yeah.
Just so people do understand as well, they were also arguing that these brokerages essentially colluded to inflate buyer's agent commission.
Price fixing, essentially.
Fix the buyer's agent commission to keep it where it was. The other thing to know is that all the defendants did say they were going to appeal.
Yep.
Now, I don't know how long they have to file an actual appeal from the verdict coming in. I don't even know if the judge has ruled on the tripling or not yet.
Nope.
They haven't. So I'm assuming after that, there's a certain period of time where these brokerages and NAR have the right to appeal this verdict, and they've all said they're going to.
NAR is also in the new lawsuit, too. So NAR's in both lawsuits.
Yeah. And so they also have stated, from my reading of the actual case itself, that there were some things that happened from the plaintiff's side that they believe were done incorrectly as far as procedure with courts go, that they have some case for the appeal.
Sure. Every verdict like this typically gets appealed because it went against you, so you want another opinion on it, and you have the right to within our court system. The whole court system's a whole separate conversation. So that will probably drag out the timeline for any damages getting paid, right? NAR has already, since this has happened, had a closed-door meeting in which the CEO then retired. There was already a lot of fire behind him prior to this for some other stuff that was going on at NAR. Other brokerages have kind of left NAR, said they don't need to be a part of it anymore. There's going to be a lot of conversations around what does the future of NAR look like? Do people want to be a part of it? Do they not? But then this appeal will continue to kind of drag out what the timeline looks like for any damages being paid out. That said, in the interim, I think the agents are going to, or the brokerages or the local MLSs, all of those different things are going to start looking at policies and procedures to ensure that they're protecting themselves, right?
And I think the first one that is coming out already is the MLSs are allowing you to put 0 for the buyer's agent commission on your listing. You don't have to put at least $1.
Exactly, and that's the biggest one. But in those cases, I think they're distancing themselves from NAR because NAR still hasn't rescinded that rule.
So that was going to be my next question for you was, at least in our local MLS, we have to be a part of NAR.
Yes.
Is part of that. Do you think that pretty soon here that's no longer going to be a requirement then as well?
Yes.
How long do you think that might take to roll out?
Obviously, it might not take very long at this pace.
That's what I was wondering.
I'm looking at this going, NAR is basically kind of, in losing this case, I mean, that's really the whole purpose that they serve for us, right? We're paying them to support our best interests globally. If they're not doing that or not having success doing that despite their best efforts, they don't really serve as much of a purpose. And I think a lot of agents are feeling like NAR is a waste of their money at this point.
Devil's advocate, you could argue that if they are allowed an appeal that then drags this out for another 4 to 5 years, that it's worth staying in NAR's corner for 4 to 5 years as they drag
potentially,
it out as long as possible.
Or the brokerages, you just fight with your brokerage, right? Like EXP is going to be in it. Do they need NAR to fight with them? Are we paying twice then?
Exactly.
I mean, I'm trying to not let my own bias come out too much because it's more up for opinion. But there are a lot of agents right now that are pretty upset with NAR for both what they had been doing and what had come out about practices internally at NAR before this commission lawsuit kind of got to a conclusion, but also for the result here. That's, you're looking at that going, well, what are we paying these fees for? Do we really want to be a part of this? Did they get us into this in the first place with some of these policies they put in place that maybe we didn't need to have at any point in time? Personally, I think the clear cooperation rule and the decision to force sellers to offer something, even if it could be $1, was stupid to begin with.
It doesn't make sense. I agree with that.
It's stupid to begin with. If a seller doesn't want to offer money, they should never have offered money. We say commissions are negotiable. We're trained to say commissions are negotiable. So, but they're negotiable as long as they're $1 or more. It was pure stupidity, in my opinion.
It is. I actually I'm curious as far as the law is concerned if that was never the case. And it just said, hey, you can put it on with $0 if you want.
Yeah.
And then the agent still then acted the same as they did and said, hey, you're better off offering a buyer's agent commission because the buyer's agent has the buyer. They're more likely to bring them through. If they would have still ended up paying those buyers and not argued, though, that there was price fixing, because a lot of the arguments they brought up were around, you trained your agents to say this.
Sure, you still have a case.
You do still have a case.
Yeah, you have a much stronger case, though, when there's literally a rule that says you have to do this, right?
I agree.
I think it still would have probably been a pretty strong case for at least this jury if that would have been the way that it was structured. Now, I think we have done this we've talked about this on podcasts, right? The fact that we as agents have done this to ourselves. Over the years, the behavior of agents within this industry to focus on their own needs versus their clients' needs has continued to create a perception of real estate agents that's in a negative light. We have an industry of people that are viewed negatively by the consumers with which we serve, which in of itself is a bad thing, right? So we need to figure out how to fix that perception. But this podcast was driven off this belief that we just have to be better at our jobs. And if we're better at our jobs, people aren't going to look at Luke and I if we're clearly doing what things we practice and we're doing them well. I can't speak for my clients, but I would say I'd hope that they would look at us and be like, well, no, they're not trying to convince me to do anything. They're giving me my options. They're talking it through. They're telling me how it works. They're being honest with me, and I like them, right? They wouldn't want to sue us for these things, whereas other agents have created this perception that we aren't doing our jobs properly.
There's a lot of agents that have probably convince people to do things they shouldn't have done.
Well, exactly, and so
is what it comes back to.
But like that we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. So regardless of the outcome of how this happens, I think every agent that's upset right now should also look in the mirror and say, have I done things that would have caused my clients to feel this way? And if I have, regardless of if it's been a tough year for me, or if I'm making enough money or whatever, I need to be better at what I do. And so start doing better today if you're then one of those people.
So let's talk about what's going to come about of, not necessarily what's going to come about due to the verdict. Because again, I can't stress this enough. I would be surprised if a final decision and payout was made on this in the next 2 years.
I don't even know if they ruled you guys, Keller owes $5 billion or whatever their portion of it. I don't think they have it. Like, so then NAR would go bankrupt, I would assume. Keller would probably be on. It's really good. That's going to be interesting to see what happens to the brokerages.
Incredible amounts of money. But they're going to appeal. It's going to take a while. So at the moment, as far as that goes, it's kind of going to start becoming that long, drawn-out situation. However, stuff is probably going to change to an extent. We've already talked about how they're going to make it so you can pay $0. But I want to specifically talk about where we think buyer agency might go within the industry and what you're seeing are the possible outcomes of this outside of the offering, having the right to offer $0 on the
what's funny is I feel like if this never went to trial, like if everyone had settled, like a couple of them settled and they just moved on.
At way lower dollar amounts.
And I feel like the plaintiffs seem to be okay with this possibility of settling. I would guess most of the plaintiffs in the new lawsuit are going to try their best to settle, to not have to deal with this.
Well, because what's 33% of $50 million? It's
13?
Yeah, quite a bit.
No, sorry. It's 16.
Yeah, someone's pretty happy with them settling at $50 million.
Yeah, and so, but then like compared to the billions, right? So if the companies that went to trial weren't too proud and had just settled, which, once again, not talking about our American legal system where you can just sue people and then create incentives where they just are best off paying you millions of dollars, I think there would have been less impact here because they could have been like, well, we're going to settle, we're going to change our policy, we're going to say they don't have to offer anything. Zero's an option now. And life probably would have been pretty similar. So like you could tell a seller, yeah, you can offer 0 if you want to. It's your choice, right? But I think now there's enough smoke here that you're likely to see maybe more meaningful change coming out of this as a result of the verdict because clearly there's more problems here than maybe we were aware of with the way the jury kind of ruled on this one.
And the first thing that I think could, and this one is a little bit counterintuitive, but there's a chance that not much happens here, at least in the Twin Cities area from a buyer agent commission. Like, I don't think 2024, you're all of a sudden going to see people offering 1%.
Not
I really don't.
I don't think it'll be frequently.
It'll happen.
Yeah, it does today.
It already happens.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen already. I don't think it's going to happen in a meaningful way.
No, commissions at some point too, you got to think about this. We as agents, we don't talk about this a lot, but with our team, right? We say like when prices were inflating 10%, commission rates weren't really deflating, right? So they were staying about the same. So you as an agent were getting like a 10% raise every year just because of the way home prices were appreciating, which is inherently a little backwards. You would think that commissions would be getting kind of squeezed as price values were going up as wildly as they were, because we're getting paid off of the sale price of the home. So if the asset appreciates that fast, it would only actually make sense that the commission rates would get squeezed a little bit, but they really haven't been.
A lot of people have talked about flat rate fees at different price breaks. So they said, like, if you're selling $1 million house versus a $600,000 house, why do you get 3% on the $400K spread?
It makes no sense.
It is confusing.
I mean, you have to work harder in some cases on bigger houses. You might spend more on marketing. There's different things you do, but the delta on the sale
way higher on the agent side
from an effort standpoint compared to the sale price. Yeah. Not even close. And that's why some people like to do certain types of listings versus others. But I mean, it's weirdly how a lot of industries work, though. So it was interesting that doesn't happen. I think we might see some more compression coming. I think more agents are going to be a little more freaked out. They're already a little freaked out right now because the market's been slow. So people are probably taking listings at cheaper percentages anyways. And now this opens them up to maybe feel a little more
okay with it.
Yeah, comfortable saying, hey, we'll do 2.5 on this one instead of 2.7, right? Like that maybe will become more of a norm that we'll see.
Yeah. And I see 0.2 not pushing the needle, right? When you get to, I would even say 2%, not to tell agents what they should be doing and offering on the buyer side commission, but at 2% even, I don't personally believe, and I know agents shouldn't drive their buyers away from houses if they're having...
It's happening, though.
I know, it shouldn't, but it does. I don't think 2% would necessarily meaningfully drive away buyers agents. Once you go below 2 is where I would see that negatively impacting you as a seller based on how the agents act.
I would say, though, like any agent who is being honest, even myself, right? If you're used to seeing 2.7 as the number and you're helping a client and you're seeing 20 houses and 19 of them have 2.7 or 2.5 or whatever, and you see 1.5 on house number 20, you'd be like, well, I mean, I'm still going to help them, but like, man, this is a little bit of a conundrum, right? Like, maybe I have to ask them for some extra money now to fund the fact that this seller's not going to pay the same amount. But that's not what's really happening right now because we're seeing so much continuity across commissions. Mm-hmm. But I think that's more of where this might be heading.
Yeah, and I'm going to be curious to see where the breaks are and how badly it negatively impacts sellers. That's going to be the interesting part.
But like maybe there's this reality now. This is the vision that I kind of have for the future here. So I worked in pricing in the corporate world, and one of the biggest complaints I had about pricing in really every sphere, so like healthcare, for example, there's no transparency in pricing. Our industry doesn't have much transparency in pricing.
Well, not many do.
If you're a buyer, you're like, I don't pay the commission, so I don't care what they're getting paid, and I don't whatever. I could send a form over saying I was getting 6%. They wouldn't care because they're not paying me 6%. So I think there's going to probably be a reality now where you're starting to see buyer broker comp published on Zillow and Redfin. So that's now visible in a way that it probably wasn't even 2 years ago. You're going to have conversations happening with buyers and buyers agents now on the front end saying, hey, this is how I get paid. This is how much I would get paid in a normal transaction. Sellers do sometimes offer compensation, but now with this new lawsuit, sellers are going to have the option to offer zero. In the case where a seller offers less, my commission rate is still going to be this, right? This is what I do my job for. So you will have visibility to every house that we look at, what the buyer broker comp is going to be. And if it's below that number, we will have a conversation about whether or not we have to add some money to your loan to make up the difference in terms of what I would get paid. You know, if it was 2.5 versus 2.7, then I'd be like, guys, I'm not going to take your money.
Yeah.
But like,
if it's 1.5, it gets tricky.
I think buyers agents are going to start having those conversations or having to have those conversations in a more meaningful way than we have so far. Because most buyers you meet for the first time and their first question is, well, do I have to pay for this? Do I have to pay? And most of the time your answer is, well, yes, it's part of the way the process works. The money is going to come out of the seller's net proceeds, but yes, there's money coming to me from this transaction. Whereas in the future, it's the seller offers this, then we'll have to make up the difference. If they don't, we have to make the difference, which will impact the sellers, though, too.
Mm-hmm. I will also say that the real estate industry, compared to a lot of other industries, has a more forward commission structure. Like, people understand how we get paid better than a lot of other
industries. Yeah,
we are a lot more, which is interesting because we're the ones that are on this scenario, right? Trying to stay unbiased, getting attacked on that side of the commissions. But like, when I bought my car, I have no idea what that guy got paid,
or how he got paid, or
who paid. I have no idea.
Yeah,
like, don't even know a percentage. I still don't even know how lenders get paid.
I was talking to a friend who's got travel agents like in the family, and
no idea.
They get paid kind of like how we get paid. Like, there's a commission for everything you book. Mm-hmm. So if you book directly from the Cosmo in Vegas, the Cosmo collects that commission for the booking. But if it goes to Expedia collects the commission for the booking. Mm-hmm. But we don't pay any of it. It's all lumped into the price that we pay for our booking.
Exactly.
So it's kind of similar in a lot of ways to a lot of other industries. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. It's just unique.
The other thing that I think will roll out, and I talked to my lender last week about this, and he said that Fannie and Freddie typically move quite slow on things. But I do believe that if we start to see a drastic compression on the buyer agent commission, so let's say sellers find out that 1.5 doesn't negatively impact them, let's just say, and they start rolling that out across the board, Fannie and Freddie's biggest concern is always first-time home buyer affordability, being able to buy houses. And one of the big arguments is, well, if you all of a sudden make it so the buyer's got to bring another, let's say even 1% to cover the difference on a $400,000 house. They're averaging $4 to $5 extra K to buy a house. They can't afford that. They are going to offer a loan program with the income limit, with the home ready, home possible, where they will just inflate the mortgage amount 1% or whatever that is above the appraised value. Because they can change whatever policy they want.
Well, think of the forms right now, right? Like, there's the VA funding fee, and you can either put it into the loan or you can pay it, right?
They'll add it on. They'll add it on as an ability to add it on to the loan, which, funny enough, in my opinion, is the exact same thing that's currently happening. The only difference,
you get to the same outcome because they'll say, I'm paying my agent $10,000. I'm going to take my purchase price down $10,000. I'll add it onto the loan. You'll end up in the same place.
Same place.
But there's more transparency.
Yes, there's more transparency because the buyer understands that they're paying them.
Yes.
Because right now, what I always, and I think part of that is because agents don't, we have been bad for so long. We've said, well, don't worry about it. I'm free. The seller's paying it. And then I always look at them and go, okay, let's talk about this for real. I'm getting paid, let's say around my brokerage is getting paid 2.7, then I'm getting a split of that. The sellers are paying that out of their side of the settlement statement, but you just got a $300,000 mortgage to pay the sellers. And then from that $300,000, the sellers are paying their own agent as well.
Yep.
So you could argue that you're paying the listing agent too.
To an extent.
You could.
Yeah.
Everybody's paying everybody.
Yeah, the money theoretically, if agents, unless agents are overpaid, right? So if agents are overpaid right now, we're making extra money because of the way that this game is structured. Mm-hmm. And we start talking to buyers, and buyers are like, oh, wow, I didn't realize you're making that much. You're not worth it. Mm-hmm. Then at that point, you'll see commissions get compressed, right? But if agents aren't theoretically overpaid, you'll still see similar behaviors. I mean, like there are agents out there on the sell side that commonly have 3% payouts or higher for their buyer broker comps because the conversation with the seller goes, hey, agents are going to be driven by the financial payout of this sale. So if we offer a higher comp, even $1,000 or $2,000, what we've seen historically is that more agents will try to make that sale happen for their clients. So you'll sell your house faster, maybe at a higher price. That offsets the amount you're paying in that higher case. So there are arguments to be made on both sides of this, but at least in those cases, the seller is actually making a decision strategically with their agent together in a transparent way to say, this is what I'm paying and this is why I'm doing it.
And the market is going to also, where the market's at is going to dictate that a ton.
Yep.
Because I even said if this was 2020 all of a sudden and this came out,
buyer comps will go down.
They definitely would have went down. But now you're looking at a time where I'm going and touring these houses and there's they've been on the market for 30 days.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to buy it. You then lowering your buyer's agent commission is not going to help you in that scenario. Mm-mm. If you had 10 offers, you can kind of do whatever the heck you want, right? But if you're sitting on the market and you don't have any, it's going to be a lot harder to argue.
Absolutely. No, it's all fair. I mean, even right now, there's been these programs like, flat fee listings forever, right? Those are not new, where it's like, I'll sell your house for $500 and take 3 photos, right? That saves the seller money. And in those cases, they usually offer like 2% on the buy side. Mm-hmm. It's been going on forever. And these programs that are inherently set up to advantage sellers to minimize the cost of the sale. But people are choosing not to do that frequently. If that was the solution, was just reduce compensation to buyers and buyers' agents, you would just see more people doing that on the front end, right? So there's clearly some value happening from some agents in the marketplace that have created this reality, but transparency is always a good thing for consumers. And so I don't have any sort of qualms with the reality that our industry is going to have to go through a period where we bring more transparency. It's be painful in the front end because right now there's none. So going from none to this new level of transparency is going to require a shift in perception that's going to be hard to get people to on the front end. But theoretically, within 3 to 5 years, if you do it well and you do your job well, that's going to become the new expectation for how buying a house works. It's just changing from I pay 0 to I pay something. That's the hurdle on the front end. That's the hurdle.
And if you are worried about your commission moving forward, the number one thing you can do is become a better buyer's agent. Understand houses, understand negotiations, understand how to find your clients a house that they're happy with, and understand how to make your clients trust you and not make them feel like you're just trying to sell them a used car, because they won't want to pay you then. But if you're doing a really good job and they trust you and they like you, they will want you to get paid.
Yep.
Because they understand they have jobs and they're not dumb people. I've had clients that have tried to, like, at one point they said that since they had found X, Y, or Z, the house, that they felt like we should negotiate that a little bit. And then we start touring houses and they go, wait a second, we would like you to get paid the full amount.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing a good job, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so if you're worried about it, focus more on being better, is what I would say.
And it's I understand the fear, right? We all have families. We want to make sure we're going to be making money. We have to feed our kids. We have to provide the best way that we can. So there's the construct of fear is very appropriate in a lot of these cases. And our industry is at a place where fear is probably at the highest point since the crisis in 2008. Mm-hmm. So, agents are struggling already. Now this is happening. Brokers are getting just clobbered left and right. Like, it is a very fearful time. So I understand that the response to fear is usually defensiveness. So I'm afraid, so therefore I'm going to lash out defensively. But I get disappointed reading whether it's like Facebook comments to posts on this stuff or like Inman articles where people respond to it, and all everyone does is kind of whine, right? No one's like, hey, let's take this opportunity to be better. Mm-hmm. They're all like, this is ridiculous. Everyone's coming after us. Blah blah. Like it. I just have found that seems to be a very consistent behavior amongst real estate agents, and at least these comments, these forums, is just
I think that's a
complaining.
general human population.
But it's just complaining and whining about everything, and it's like, guys, this is a point in time. It's an inflection point. So you can either choose to complain and whine and keep doing the same things and fall out of the industry, because that's what will happen if you don't decide to change and adapt with it, or you can choose to try to take some of these things and challenge yourself to improve, right? Do things you've never done before. Get mentors that can help you through these things. Find a team where you can get coached or get leads or whatever you need to get to be better. Do 10 open houses in the next 3 weeks. Like, there are people doing these things that are succeeding. So it's time for you to have to do some of these things. And it sucks to hear that. But the reality is instead of wallowing, instead of getting upset, instead of being fearful, take those emotions and try to translate them into action, because that's where you'll get better.
We're running out of time here, but last piggyback on that. It kind of like sports psychology. At some point, you will feel fearful. You will feel like you want to whine. Whining is okay if it's to yourself or to your significant other,
totally,
or to like your closest group of people for a little bit of time, and then you move forward and continue. There's no other way. If you stay there, you're screwed.
Yep.
But if you say, "Oh, like this stinks. I'm upset about this. It's a bummer. What am I going to do to move forward?" Because if you don't ever get to the what am I going to do to move forward, you're going to be stuck, and you are not going to stay on the bandwagon. You are going to be left behind.
And the world will keep moving forward without you.
Oh, it always does. And that's all we have this week on the Nerdy Agent Podcast. And as always, remember, be better